that he does.
Yeah. Yep. Well, helicopters help.
I figured as much. Yeah, yeah. No, I would have thought so too. But just the framing of your shots is what drew me to it mostly. I would imagine there's quite a bit of post editing that goes into it, but it has a very like natural look to them. They look like they're almost untouched.
Yeah, I try and keep it looking, as I try and get my images as close to, what I envisioned in camera, and then
Hmm.
just kind of help accentuate the light and, yeah, move on from there. Sometimes it's, as we're learning, we tend to overcook things, but I feel like I'm in a good place with the editing at this point, and, try and keep it clean and, yeah, try and tell the story through the image.
Interesting, I see. And I know what you mean by overcook because I've done a little bit of photography myself, and my usual like rule of thumb was if I can tell that it's edited or if I'm getting um like the chromatic effect of like the pixels just being oversaturated, then like that's when I
Mhm.
know I need to stop.
Definitely, definitely.
Right on. Oh yeah, and we're live. Thank you for everyone that's joining the stream. Thank you for coming on, Paul. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. But yeah, as we were saying just before there, I stumbled upon your page there, and I don't know. Maybe it's just me because I grew up in urban environments all my life, but there's just something about New York that is so alluring to the outsider. I'd imagine like over time, if you spend enough time there, you kind of get used to it, and it's not special. Maybe that's not the word for it, but um, I'm assuming it could like kind of fade into the background. But what is it that about the city that you think draws so many people to it?
I think that it is just the essence of the city. It's fast. It's intense. It is multinational, multicultural. There's art. There's food. There's music. There's film. It's just and there's big business, and so um it's it's kind of like this hub of international activity, and it's exciting to be there. When that's not a part of your everyday life, to just get thrown in the middle of it, it's overstimulating. It's can be daunting, or can be I don't know, yeah, overwhelming. But there is an undeniable excitement that is just inherent in its being. Yeah, and I think being a native to the area, I don't think that it ever really loses that. But like you learn to swim at the speed of the water that's flowing around you, right?
Hmm.
And so it you may be less impacted by the overwhelming aspects of the city, but I don't think it doesn't get old for me. It never gets old for me.
I see. And when you say overstimulating, I'd imagine there's quite a bit of an adjustment period for people that come in that have never like spent enough time there, just because of how much there's going on. I feel like that's the one thing that I've heard from residents there is that like you just kind of it gets to the point where you can't fall asleep unless you hear sirens.
um, yeah, I mean, I don't know about the sirens aspect of it, but there's sound. It's a 24-hour city. So there's always some sound going on, whether it's trains or horns honking or whatever, planes flying overhead. It's uh, it's definitely, yeah. I mean, in the sense of it being overstimulating, I think it's just the sound of the streets and how fast people are moving.
Hmm.
How loud conversations can be sometimes. Just a matter of, um, yeah, if you're not used to the speed, I think is really kind of the overwhelming aspect of it. People walk fast and they expect you to either keep up or get out of the way.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, you gotta be able to kind of blend into that energy if you're in that city. I mean, I'll see it every now and then, like in Toronto up here when we get tourists from elsewhere. But comparing it is like it's not even. It's like day and night.
Mm.
I would imagine compared to New York in terms of how much people go in and out of the city. Um, but in any case, how long did you live there for?
I lived in the New York City area pretty much my whole life. So, and we moved 4 years ago. So, 45 years.
Oh wow. That's quite
Yeah.
a while. What triggered the move, if you don't mind me asking?
It was a combination of just, I wanted to see what life was like, outside of this bubble that I was living in. Also, around that time, I had just finished my first photography book, um, and had designs on working on another one, which I am, but of a different theme, more geared towards national parks. And that's still a work in progress, but figured I needed to be somewhere where there was a major airport because all of my clients are and are in the New York City area, so I had to be able to get back there quickly for work, and yeah, just a different change of pace. Um, yeah, it was time.
That's interesting. So you went all the way from uh, the most densely urban spot, arguably on the planet, or at least in North America, to uh, to switching directions and pivoting to more like natural, not wildlife, but scenery kind of photography.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that necessarily anything has changed with my photography. I'm still doing aerial photography. It's a lot of it is New York based, but I'm definitely learning about wildlife photography. I'm learning different aspects of framing with landscape photography. This is all not to say that I haven't done this before, but now it's just a little bit more concentrated and a little bit more intentional as opposed to just kind of random trips out west or somewhere else. There's yeah, there's just it's refreshing because it's a new level of or a new area of creativity and exploration.
I see. Okay, I understand. Um, and how did you how did this all start? I'm guessing like you just picked up a camera as a kid, as I mean most do. I mean my mom had an old, I think it was an Olympus film camera lying around, and it wasn't until I was a teenager that I actually looked it up and how to actually work it and where I can get the film, and I realized it's actually a lot simpler than I thought it would be, and got right into it. But how was the start for you? Where did that come from?
I kind of had two starts. One was a little bit of a stalled start. As a younger kid, yeah, in high school, I was about, I don't know, 14 or 15. I took a photography class, a film photography class, learned how to do everything. This is before digital cameras were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all manual film and really liked it, but I was focusing more on music at the time. I'm a musician as well. My degree is in jazz. I play the saxophone. Um, and so it wasn't for probably another 15 years that I picked up a camera again. We had a trip. My wife and I were going on a trip to New Mexico, never been before, and had a little point and shoot and started taking pictures of things that like really were striking to me and remembered how much I love taking pictures and then just slowly but surely really started to be intentional about bringing my camera everywhere and trying to find things and get advice from other photographers. And shortly after that, Instagram started and built community that way. The New York creative community is just one of the most incredible communities as far as willingness to meet people, excitement, encouragement, and yeah, perspective expanding opportunities if you spend some time here and watch what you know people are doing. It's really incredible. So that's the short or the long short version of how it started.
Interesting. So this is something that you picked on like later in life, like having graduated, married, um, and kind of just fell into it as a kind of passion of sorts.
Yeah, I'd say it's been going on 17 years now that I've been into photography, but it was, yeah, later on in life for me. Just found it and found a new way to express creativity.
Interesting. And you mentioned the New York community. Um, the impression I get as an outsider is that a lot of dynamics of New York, whether it's business or personal or otherwise, that they can be very cutthroat. And there's just a lot of, what's the right word for it? Um, Emphasis on the individual and less on the collective. Now that's the impression that I get from movies, stories I read and whatnot. Having never lived there, I don't actually know what it's like. But from your perspective, what is this? What would that experience like for you?
Yeah, how do I explain this? Yeah, I think there is an inherent abruptness to New Yorkers, and it's just because of at the pace that we move. I oftentimes say that New Yorkers may not be nice, but they're exceptionally kind. I think it's a worthwhile differentiator. We may not necessarily hold your hand, but if you need help with something, um, they will always stop to help. Um, it may not be, we're not looking for the story behind how you got into trouble. It's just, what do we have to do to get you moving again? Um, and as far
Mm,
as the creative community goes, yeah, no, it's not. It Look, we're all human beings. We're all individuals. We all have individual goals and points of view. But in regards to the creative community in New York City, it is incredible. It is warm. It's welcoming. More so even than like I was given the fact that the New York City area creative community was the only one that I've ever really been a part of, and in a large way. I was completely shocked by the lack of community out here in Colorado and how people don't want to engage. And it's taken a long time for me to find, you know, uh, a dozen people that regularly will want to go out and shoot or just kind of talk shop.
hmm,
Whereas in New York, if you were coming in, even if I wasn't going to be around and somebody said, "Hey, I'm coming to New York, like I'd love to hang out," I would feel comfortable introducing them to three or four other people and being like, "Hey, this person's coming into town. Would you mind, if you're around, can you show them around?" And it would never be an issue. They're always welcomed warmly. So yeah, I think the persona of New York sometimes leads with the kind of head down and I'm gonna roll you over and get out of the way.
hmm.
But I think also there's a level of kindness that you don't really see unless you're spending time there.
Interesting. That the way that you framed it, also, I'd like your you said that it's not about being nice, but that if
Hmm.
you do need help, people will be kind enough to actually offer it. Um,
Yep.
that basically sums like, I'd say it sums up the Toronto experience. Also, I think I've seen kind of the same dynamics where like because of just how much is going on, you have to tune out a section of the world. Um, Whether it's like people selling stuff on the street or arguments and whatnot. But if you see like an old lady, that needs help carrying something, like there's always going to be somebody given enough time that's gonna actually going to come up and do it. And that, like, they're not soulless, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah. Yeah, I would say, and then like just the sense of community in and of itself, there's, 7 million people there. So you either have to, roll up your sleeves and help or just get out of the way. Um it's yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain other than how I just did. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I think that definitely uh suffices
Yeah, I
an
got the gist of it.
explanation there. Yeah.
Um, Question for you: in terms of your style, is it what is it about your style that kind of drove you to it in terms of taking all these massive panning shots of the skyscrapers and I guess the landscape of New York? Because some people, they go into macro photography and they just want to take miniatures of whatever it is. Um, and every photographer has their own kind of approach to it. But what is it that drew you to yours?
Yeah, I mean, this particular project that you have up on the screen right now is, kind of it was a special project where we wanted to go um higher than anyone's gone before in an open door helicopter.
Open door.
And yeah, yeah, so it's
Wow.
just us in a seat and
And a seatbelt.
um yep, seatbelt for
Okay.
sure. But yeah, nothing between us and the ground and 3 miles below us at all.
Wow.
Um but yeah, this particular project came because through the years I've done what we once dubbed high altitude flights, which was somewhere between like 6,500 feet to 8,000 feet above the ground in a helicopter. And then a couple years before this actual flight that's on the screen now, I went with a friend in a fixed wing airplane. We went up to uh, 10,500 feet. I was like, oh man, like this is really cool, but I'd
Whoa.
love to see what it looks like from, 15,000 feet. Um, and I think a lot of my photography um, stems from focusing on things that I want people to see the beauty in the world. And in my early development, I always said that if I was living somewhere, that wasn't 10 minutes from the, most photographed city in the world, I'd be a landscape photographer. Um, so I always try to incorporate the natural processes in um, with the city, whether or not that means I'm shooting from New Jersey or somewhere else or from the air, to see, you know, fog encapsulating a bridge or a beautiful sunrise or sunset, or anything, snow, things that show that life moves through all these processes here just like it does everywhere else. The idea of showing the natural land formation, showing off that New York is really a city made up of islands, that was really fascinating to me. Um, and so, yeah, 15,000 feet is the highest we've been so far. There, I have designs to go higher, but I have to find the right situation and crew and things like that. But what it also revealed to me is that how many, in this one frame, even that we're looking at now, where you have like half of Manhattan, you have some of Queens, you have Brooklyn, the top of the frame, you have Staten Island, and then you have New Jersey on the right side of the frame. Like millions of lives, individual lives are happening in this picture. And how people are coexisting together, and outside of like the showing off, like look at the development inside this small narrow neck of, confluence of two different rivers, in the Atlantic Ocean. Looks like this was kind of revealed to me more along the lines of like a cultural commentary as well.
Hmm. Yeah, this shot is stunning. I do have to say, um, your messaging there, how you described it, it does actually come through as seeing the city is not something that was just artificial and forced uh, forced to grow there by man, but something that actually coexists with the natural landscape around it. It does come through. I mean, certainly the New York's geography with Central Park being the highlight there helps that along. But the more you zoom out, um, the more the whole thing seems organic. On the street level, it's just blocks, concrete, metal, buses, all that stuff. But when you get at this level, you can actually see. I mean, just the wave that the skyscrapers make alone, and how they go up and down in certain sectors of the city, um,
Mm-hmm.
adds like that kind of topographical feel to it, as if like we're erecting mountains out of concrete.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It is. It's amazing to look at when and just being up there and seeing it. Taking a moment or two outside of photographing so that you have a memory of it. Yourself. Yeah. It's it's inspiring for sure. At least for me. I'm. I love what I do. So it's doing something new like this. That's something nobody's done before. Is It's exciting, and I feel the weight of it when I'm planning for it. And but yeah, it's I like showing things that maybe somebody hasn't considered yet.
Yeah, and I'm genuinely surprised that you said you were among the first to like actually get this high and to have this kind of project.
Yeah, to my knowledge, no one's flown that high in an open door helicopter before. People have done around 10,000, but not 15,000 feet. It's a whole different level of flight and preparedness and planning with the pilot and levels of safety protection that go into an endeavor like this. You're pushing the limits of a helicopter, how high it can fly, um, and so yeah, there's a lot to consider in order to capture these images and create these images. So it's much more in depth than just like hopping in. It's not like you're just driving somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I think we sometimes we lose the fact that it takes a lot of planning when we see images and we're kind of in this scrolling environment and culture where we just kind of are consuming content. I try and veer away from the moniker of content creator, and I want to lean more into like bringing it back to people being either creators or artists. Content to me always feels like that word content always feels like it's disposable. And
Mm-hmm.
I want my images to be remembered and to last. I think that's probably why I lean so much into working with publishers to create books and things like that, where there's a permanence to it. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this much: as an enjoyer of your content, that does certainly come through. Because one thing that I did notice early on when I started following you was the question kept popping into my head. I was like, "How the fuck did he get that shot? Like,
Hmm.
what kind of undertaking was involved in getting this together?" Because I'd imagine, like, for something like this, I mean, um, I'd be shitting myself if I was that high up in the air with no doors. And not only that, but that I had to have like a camera, make sure all my equipment works, have like a ton of like
Hmm.
backup batteries and SD cards. Like what what was the preparation like for that shoot?
I mean, the prep was really kind of finding a company that'd be willing to at least go down the road of what ifs. A lot of the times you just get a solid no, like no, we're not interested, or no, that's not what we do, and so there was a higher level of production company that we had to work with, rather than just kind of like your everyday helicopter tour type
Mm-hmm.
of situation. You're talking with people who, fly either much lower or much higher, or have much more powerful helicopters, things along those lines we have to consider, and then finding the right team to be able to do it, and then plan it to a T, and then you have to talk to air traffic control, because there's different levels of airspace that you're moving through. We were
Mm-hmm.
flying above airlines that were coming and going from the New York City area um, airport. So I have pictures of airplanes that I'm 5,000 feet above. Um,
Oh wow.
and so there's a lot to consider. There's a lot of safety talks that you have to have. It's a huge part of what we do. And then obviously, I mean, none of this goes without the inherent risk of something that can go wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can see that even just last week there was a tragedy there in New York, where a helicopter went down and we lost people. Uh, and So there is a risk that's also associated with this that we don't like to, not that we don't like to talk about, but unless it's smacking you dead in the face, you don't really understand. Like there's every time I'm up in a helicopter and I land, the first thing I do is I text my wife just the word alive, and and because there's always you, you know there's always that risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that should be something that I think should be considered when we're talking about the creation of these, whether I'm 3 miles above New York City or I'm 1,000 feet above. The risk is always there.
It does certainly come through because if I look at this long enough, it's gonna start giving me like the vertigo thinking like just how high you'd have to get to get up here, especially if you're flying above commercial flights. I didn't realize that you guys had gone up that high. And I get what you mean about the safety because I've heard that helicopters are, at least like compared to airplanes, there is a higher risk of like flight failure or just issues happening. Especially with an open door, I would imagine that there's I mean, it gets cold up there, right? Because this looks like, just telling by the tree coloration there, this was done sometime in the fall, I would assume.
Yep. Yeah, this was done November, um 2022, 2022, 2023. I don't know, one of those years,
Hmm.
2022 or 2023. Um,
So I'm guessing like
Yeah, it gets
winter
cold.
puffer.
You lose every 1,000 feet. I think it's like somewhere between 3 and 5 degrees. So if it's 50 degrees on the ground and then you're going up to 15,000 feet, you're losing, 45 degrees. So yeah, you're bundled up. I'm wearing a jacket and a vest and gloves and a hat and thermal underwears and all that good stuff, just so that I don't have to be concerned with the elements. I can just focus on what I have to do. Um, yeah, it's definitely the wind can be an issue. I don't know. I can't speak to the percentage of flight failures for helicopters compared to airliners or anything like that. I don't know all that information. I wouldn't really want to fashion a guess either, just because I feel like you know we think about safety enough that I don't want to start thinking about percentages while I'm working.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair
Uh,
enough.
yeah. Um, but yeah, it that's another level of it that is, especially when you're moving from place to place, you move quickly, so imagine, you know, it's 30 degrees wherever you are, however high you are, and then you're, going 90 to 100 miles an hour with all the windows down in your car, and then you have to take a picture. Um, so it can be quick. You have, narrow windows. There are times when we can slow down, but no pilot really likes to hover, especially over populated areas. So you have to be prepared. You have to visualize beforehand, and then you have to be ready to execute when the time comes. So we're not just like hovering, and just sitting in one place. That's, I think, the difference between what you can do with a drone and what happens in a helicopters. Like I said, especially around cities,
Hmm.
um, there's a whole different level of safety concerns when it comes to drones. But there is an element for when I'm flying a drone out here, and I'm in an open space, and it's a lot more meditative than it is. Like I'm going to work, like it is in New York, and in a helicopter, because I can take my time. I can make frames. I can. Well, what if I turn this way? What if, like, I know I have 45 or 25 to 30 minutes for each battery. So I could fly for 2 hours and just kind of explore. Um, yeah, so a little different animal, um, than drone photography for sure.
I see. And in terms of the timing for November, was that deliberate, or is it just how you guys managed to get the project together and the timing of it all?
Yeah, well, typically November is when we lose the haziness around the city. That was not the case this morning. It took a lot of work to get these images as clean as they look. But we were fighting a lot of haze that week. We did pick that week because, like I said, typically that's when the air clears out and it's like crisp and clear, and you can see 50 miles in any direction when you're up in a helicopter.
Hmm.
But as weather often is, it doesn't conform to what we always wanted to do, and you have to problem shoot. And so another large portion of the work that went into creating these images was recovering the detail, that shooting through haze and then light that's coming from, as opposed to like directly overhead, which would have been probably better for us. It's coming in perpendicular to how we're shooting, right? This was shot just after sunrise. We took off just before sunrise because I wanted to have golden hour.
Hmm.
So the sun is very low in the sky. It's November, so it's even shorter days, even shallower angle of the sun moving. So all these things we considered, but um, we had 3 days to shoot, and we had to pick a day that we thought was going to be, the least troublesome. And it turns out that we picked the right day. But yeah, that was another aspect of it, of why we chose to do it in November. Still kind of warm, but yeah, not everything lined up, but we were still happy with the outcome for sure.
Yeah, no, the haze certainly does come through. And is that just like the smog? Is it just because of? I mean, I don't like it. Is it just the air quality, the amount of like cars there, or like what is it that causes that?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you look at that city and think, if it's 80 degrees, how many air conditioners are running, right?
Mm.
But also you're talking about a city that is literally surrounded by water on all sides. So there's a level of um, evaporation that happens on a daily
Hmm.
basis. When it gets warmer, if it's 80 degrees, your water is evaporating and creating haze. And this was, we had 60 to 70 degree days in a time when we were looking at, normally we wanted lows to be in the 40s and get up into the 50s or 60s. There's a big difference in how that translates. So it's both, I think, a natural aspect, again, like the kind of intersection of man-made and natural forces that are happening that I like to incorporate. And you fall subject to it sometimes. So I think some of it may have been um like man-made, whatever, pollutants that go into the air. But I mean, any given other day, that time of year, it is crisp beyond crisp. You can see forever. So a lot of it was weather based. This where the temperatures were higher, and the air was getting warm air, and the condensation was getting trapped at a lower level. Uh, so it just kept that haze there.
Gotcha. And I'm guessing you weren't exactly hot swapping lenses there when you when you were up there. Like you would have had a loadout ready to go, or did you just have some spares just in case you wanted different perspectives?
No, I always fly with two cameras. They're not really. We don't change lenses when we're in a helicopter or batteries or anything like that. So you're up there. This was about a 90-minute flight to get up to 15,000 feet and then shoot and then come back down. Um, Typically, when I'm flying, I'm shooting with a wide angle lens like you see here.
Hmm.
And then, although it may look like a wide angle lens, some of the other shots there were shot on a telephoto zoom, like a 70 to 200 lens, where I can get some details and some compression um, visually in the shots. So yeah, I always shoot with a ultra wide so that I can get the bigger picture. But then I want a lens that allows me to get into some of the nitty gritty, into some of the details that you don't often get a chance to see when you're at street level, the architectural details, tops of buildings, things like that.
I see. And one thing that does stand out to me about the shot, I didn't expect that there would be so much boat traffic out in November. Is that just like people that in the same way that like those that can afford it will like roof hop with helicopters in between I don't know, ports or like going to the airport and whatnot? Is it like just the same thing? It's just a form of transit for people, or what is that all that action there?
Yeah, New York, New Jersey, Staten Island, they have a very large network of ferries. Um, so boat traffic is a normal thing. This It's not just like that's not recreation. Um, like somebody's just on a jet ski or a speedboat. There's and New York is an enormous port as well. So you not only have that, but if you're looking further out, even in the other shot, where it was looking out more towards the harbor, you're gonna get um, you're gonna get a lot of the tankers and stuff like that, like towards that open water area. You get cargo ships, and just to the right, there's a port in Bayonne, New Jersey. There's a port. Um, Cruise ships come in and out into Brooklyn, and then come up the Hudson River, just south of Central Park. So there's a lot of boat traffic. I mean, this is what made New York what it was. Why it became such a important um, hub of commerce was because they figured out how to use the Hudson River, and then you know I don't need to give you a history lesson, but from the Hudson River, they built the Erie Canal, which brought commerce to the Great Lakes and allowed cities like Chicago to be built because then you can move through the Great Lakes.
Hmm.
So it's all kind of connected, like Toronto and I'm sure like the St. Lawrence River, right? Is something along those lines where, you're getting traffic, in from the ocean, and you're able to be a port of commerce. And a lot of older pictures of New York, a lot of the docks and piers are gone, because the island of Manhattan used to be just from the bridges all the way up to where you see those piers on the right side were lined with piers. And that
Mm.
was just a way of life. And it still is to a certain degree. A lot of people use the ferries. Staten Island Ferry is a huge, huge fixture of how people get to Manhattan to work from Staten Island. So, yeah, lots of boats for sure.
Yeah, we see some like that kind of activity here in Toronto, but not nearly to this level. I mean, I figured it wasn't just like people out on their jet skis in November, right? Right as winter's about to hit. I don't think that would be too fun.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that it just once again, it's yet another reminder of like the scale of life that is happening constantly, just the nonstop movement. Um, just absolute kinetic energy happening at all times around you. Do you miss that about New York? Or is there anything that you miss compared to your now circumstances in Colorado?
yeah. I mean, I get asked this a lot. I mean, I go back enough that like there's certain things that I do miss. Like it doesn't become something like where I'm like, oh gosh, I miss the food. To be
Mm,
honest with you, food. Uh, a simple thing like a really nice loaf of bread is hard to find out here, where you take that for granted. In other areas, I thrive in that speed, in that um, those intense environments. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think the first time I ever went back after moving, I never realized like how much of essence of like salt water was in the air there until I didn't live there for an extended period of time. And the first time I came back, like I smelt that, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like something that I didn't anticipate encountering. When you live there, you go nose blind, right?
mm-hmm.
As in any environment, but yeah, it was still one of those things that was shocking. How did I not know this? I lived my whole life around here, and but yeah, other than that, I mean, I don't know. I'm not someone who's overly sentimental. I understand where I'm from. I understand what made me. I understand who I am as a person. And so I take all of those experiences as a collective version of who I am and try and present that or be the best person I can be. Um, Either because of what I've lived through or despite of what I lived through. But yeah, I yeah, I don't know. I love New York, so that's why I spend a lot of time there and work there, even though I'm not living there.
Well, it's undeniable. I'll give New York that. It's undeniable in the sense that I feel like if you do spend enough time living in there or one of the boroughs, that there's always going to be something that you can find that'll gravitate you or magnetize you to aspects of the city. Um, there's just that I feel like there's something for everyone there, so long as they're brave enough to go look for it.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, these shots are stunning, man. Hats off to you, honestly. I've always been I mean, I've lived in urban environments for just about all my life, um, but it's certainly not like nothing compared to where I come from. I was born in an ex-Soviet state, so sure we had like urban
Mm.
sprawl, but this level of like architecture and this the density itself as well, you can't certainly compare it. So there's just always something that has driven me to want to be in cities, no matter how urban they are. I don't know what it is, whether it's just the fact that it feels like anything at any moment can happen, just with the amount of interactions
Mhm.
that are going on a day-to-day basis. You could bump into someone you haven't seen in years, or find a new spot that just opened up, or see an outdoor show, or buskers, or people playing chess in the park and whatnot. There's just something so electrifying about it.
Yeah, there is definitely, and it's culturally diverse, so you get a lot of first generation. There's neighborhoods that are nationalities, so it's like the United Nations as well. You can get first generation experience of people who are, you know, right out of the country that they lived in, where the food that think that came from, and then all of a sudden you can discover an entire depth to a culture that you've never really fully understand it firsthand.
Hmm.
And yeah, it allows you to maybe be a little bit more open in your interpretation of the world, just because you're exposed to it, whether you want to be exposed to it or not. And I always feel like it's up to us to determine how we experience things. So I've always kind of had that openness of like, all right, let's try this. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's learn. Let's find the similarities, but also celebrate, the uniqueness of each culture that is present here.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Toronto has those kind of like ethnic neighborhoods as well, whether it's Jamaica or Little Italy, Chinatown. Obviously, that's the more common one, um, where like every you skip a couple blocks and it feels like you're in a completely different country. All the signage changes, the language that you hear in conversations, the vibe of the people. Um,
Hmm.
there's there's something so cool about being able to kind of like go and explore through these areas, and you realize, oh, there's like little different pockets of the cultural diaspora that exists within these places.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's such a cool. Yeah, I don't know. I just love it. I love it. I love that aspect of it where um, you get exposed to things that are different, and I think that's really important because otherwise we get closed off and don't. You lose a level of understanding and compassion.
Right on. And just to pivot a little here, you mentioned that you were coming up as a photographer right around the time that Instagram came on. Um, what's your take on how, like, as over time, like now everyone has phones that are much better than DSLRs were, even 5 years ago or so, and just about anyone can be a photographer with the right amount of filters or editing in Lightroom or what have you. Do you find that it's harder for photographers these days that are like just starting out in their craft, or that it just kind of it forces them um, to adopt more creative, uh, not talents, but I guess approaches to their work, just because now it's just so commonplace for people to get these amazing shots.
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that phones are anywhere near as powerful or as capable as a camera that I use. Uh, you can take a picture, but it's not going to have the flexibility. It's not going to have the functionality. It's not going to have the depth of color. There's so many things that you still can't do on a phone. Um, whether it be focal lengths or like I know we're just getting more and more lenses on cameras and things of that nature, but there is a degradation. There's it doesn't have the same size sensor, so you're not getting the same level of detail.
Hmm.
um eh, and then I would say that, like, I can take a picture of something and my wife can take a picture of something and she'll be standing right next to me and still not understand how I get a shot looking the way that I do, and she has a shot looking the way she does. So there is a level of skill and understanding of light, of composition, um, that regardless of the accessibility of a phone and the cameras that it has, that you can't duplicate unless you have an understanding of what you're doing. I think in any craft that is evident. I mean, um, I think that the onus is on artists nowadays because there is this flippancy of like, oh yeah, I have a camera, or like, oh, I know this guy's got a camera, he can take pictures just as good as this guy, and it doesn't cost as much. Um, there's a level of education that has to come into play when you're talking about creating art or creating something on a professional level rather than just, you know, for a keepsake or a memory on your camera phone. There's a
Hmm.
level of intention that goes into um, creating um, to inspire rather than to just document. You know, I think there's a difference between there's a reason why there's a difference between, you know, journalistic, you know, photojournalism where framing and composition and storytelling is clear, but there's also a certain level and a line that they don't cross when they're manipulating images, right? Because they want the facts. And how do I create something that inspires, that is factual, but also is accentuating what I want you to look at, right? Um, I think all of these things come into play when you're talking about being an artist rather than just having a camera in your hand. You know, does that make
Hmm.
sense?
No, no, it certainly does. It certainly does because, as you said, you know you could be standing with your wife there, and you know even if you guys have the same gear, um, it's there's a level of intentionality that comes through in the photos that you take that you can tell that there is some kind of an artistic vision that goes into the planning. Like it doesn't matter if she like has the same f-stop focus, you know, what have you, but there's something more beyond that comes through in the work that, you know, as you said, like, you know, clients or whomever might say like, oh, if you know the other guy has a camera, he can do it the same. Well, sure, but if you look at, you know, the entire body of work that you have, there's the amount of intentionality, the amount of premeditation and understanding of how to frame the shot, highlight some things, focus on other things, and what have you, that comes through that you just can't replicate. Um, just if you have the same gear, that there is like a craft to it.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't ever really feel threatened by, you know, new phones or new technology. You know, if it's a new level of technology that I can use to help, you know, emphasize something, it's another tool, right?
Hmm.
Um, my camera is my tool, you know, like and I don't you know, there's a certain level of like I take care of my gear, but also I'm not babying it because like, you know, this is what I have to use to get images. Um, so yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good question. I think it's probably a common misunderstanding that just because you have a camera, you can take a picture as good as a professional photographer. Um, and um, and I think that's because we are so inundated with the visuals this day and age that we can see 1,000 pictures in an hour and not really think about what it took to get those images. So it's a level of, like I said, educating and hoping to get people to appreciate more than just a pretty picture.
No, I know what you mean. I'm not sure if you've heard of Billy Din. I
Yeah,
don't.
I've known Billy for yeah, a number of years.
No,
Yeah,
I figured as much because his shots also just the way that he's able to weave like an aspect of storytelling into them has always just kind of amazed me. Like the amount of the quality of his shots, not just the quality, but um the way that he's been able to capture life in his work is,
yeah,
I mean, I have never I've yet to find anyone that's able to just so successfully capture those kind of those moments where it's as if like there was no photographer at all. It was just like it's like it was a fly on the wall in the moment. It's like nobody even knew
Yeah.
that a shot was getting taken.
Yeah, he has a special talent for sure. It's thought provoking. It's like technically beautiful. The way that he treats his images, to direct your eye around the frame, and then there is always this sense of like whimsy to it as well,
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit of cheekiness, a little bit of like a playful wink. Like there's and it's intentional, which I think is important to like recognize and understand. Like everything he does is with intention. Like even that, like that's hilarious, but it's also such a cool picture, you know? Like he's finding these moments and he's in the moment recognizing like this fleeting moment is happening, but also taking the time to frame things perfectly, to capture the lighting well, and then to go in and process the image so that your eye is directed like right into what he wants you to see of like this is the thing that I've been that made me want to take this picture, and that takes a level of time and um again intention I think is becoming the word of the day for sure.
Yeah, the way that you described photography as an art form and not just simply uh, point and click like transactional, just putting out content.
Hmm.
It it comes through in Billy's photos really well. I first found him on Instagram, and at first I thought like there's no there's no fucking way this has to be like Photoshop. I don't understand how he's able to just be there at the right time for this shot and be able to just snap it. I mean, I don't know what his approach looks like. The only assumption that I have is that like he walks around New York long enough and just is lucky to capture um, these moments. But as you said, like there's so much premeditative thought that would have to go into these shots, um, that there is still
Yeah.
like a level of preparation to that kind of spontaneity in a way.
Yeah, I think there's amount of time that you spend in your environment that allows you to spot things over time, patterns. Everything in life has a rhythm to it. And if you're attuned to that, especially city life, how people move, but more importantly, like he's in places where maybe he's seen a frame before and then thought, like, what if I got this, you know?
Hmm.
But yeah, it's kind of, you have to be there to capture it. And then you have to be there to capture it and capture it excellently. There's a big difference being lucky and being prepared. I think that he's exceptionally prepared based on how much time he's put in. Um, Walking the streets, understanding when the light is going to be somewhere else, and even in a new environment, you tend to get these familiar glimpses of what the light is going to do, and you can predict, oh, it's going to move here, and maybe in 10 minutes if I move a little bit to the right, I'll get this shot. um, and then you wait for your frame. You wait for your subjects to come into that frame that you've identified as like this is going to be today's working project. But yeah, his thought and the detail and how intimate his images are, with also feeling like a little voyeuristic or hands off,
Hmm.
is exceptional. And it's kind of it's a way that I also describe the aerial images, where I say it's somehow both intimate yet hands off at the same time. And I think that his photographs are exactly that intersection. I think finding that balance is kind of what differentiates, the folks that, especially Billy, who create and share with the interest of inspiring people. Yeah, it comes through really beautifully.
It does, yeah, and that the way that you put it there, it's voyeuristic in a way. You feel like you're a spectator to this moment in life, happening, it really comes through. And certainly in your work as well, on a much bigger scale, obviously, because it's more to do with the landscape of the city. Um, but it feels like, I don't know, it feels like you're looking into something that's privileged, or not privileged, but you kind of feel special looking into it because you're like, oh, like I get to see this shot. I get to like experience that slice of life for that brief second that the shot was taken in, and you're really drawn into the work itself.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. There's a way to frame things that you're drawn and pulled into the world that the photographer is witnessing at that moment. And there's so many different approaches to doing that, right? You can do that in post processing, you can do that while you're in the field. And I think there's no wrong way of creating something that can draw someone into a world that they may not have considered before, or even just these kind of stolen moments where you're seeing a small glimpse into the culture, or everyday movings of life, that you're able to, like, someone is able to understand that just by looking at it.
Yeah, it almost hits you over the face on them when you when you see a photo like that, because it's hard to put it into words, but the feeling of it stays with you.
Definitely 100%.
Now on that note, did you have any formal training with this, or was it just something that you picked along the way and you met enough people that you were able to learn from them? Because I'd imagine there are like classes and courses that people can take, but there's only so much that instruction will do to you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I did learn the fundamentals of photography. I took a class on film, but that was a good 15 years before I started to intentionally pick up, and I had to kind of relearn. Mostly self-taught. I read a book or two here to kind of refresh myself, but then, yeah, along the way, you're starting to take pictures and you're starting to see where your own vision, your unique, interpretation of a scene. You start to kind of hone in on a style, whether it's framing, whether it's how you utilize the light. But I think also a lot of the perspective expanding things, because everybody has their own way when they first start out. And I was always kind of like, I have this shot and I'm going to go and I'm going to take this one picture and I'm going to be happy. But when I started hanging out with other photographers, I started to see other perspectives other than mine. I'd go home with the same, 30 of the same picture.
Hmm.
And so it just kind of allowed me to say, well, what if I do this? Or what if I crouch down? Or what if I take my camera off the tripod? Or what if I adjust, the depth of field, and I make this image a little dreamy, or whatever. But like, th- without the community that I was afforded the opportunity to be a part of in New York, the growth and expansion of my own perspective would have taken a lot longer time. Um, that's why always have been and will always try and be as active as I can be and giving back to the community, because it's I recognize it as something that has shaped my creative journey greatly.
Yeah, I mean, no man is an island, and I'd imagine that the same thing applies to artists as well. You can't really have there's not really like a lot of growth that you can get if you're just simply taking shots and putting it out on the web, but there's no feedback or any kind of input from differing perspectives. Because as you said before, and just because anyone can take a shot doesn't mean that they could like be an excellent uh, photographer, and unless you can actually see something that, at least like from my perspective, whenever I've seen professional shots like yours or Billy's or whomever's, it's kind of it's very humbling because I look back on my work and I'm like, oh, I could have done that better, or I could have done this, and certainly not at the professional level, nor do I, purport to be. But um, while humbling, it is also kind of refreshing to see it, because then it forces me to kind of get out of my comfort zone and be like, okay, well, I certainly need to try this, or I need to do this in post editing, or what have you. Um, it's uh, it's it's just a great reminder that the whole thing is it's a process. This isn't just something that you get like one and done. It's not just because you've taken thousands of shots and therefore you're good. Like it's a skill that you have to keep working and working and working on and evolving.
Yeah, I think if you're invested in it, you're going to evolve and want to show that evolution. I mean, we're living in a time where thankfully we have instant feedback from our cameras. We have, sometimes unsolicited feedback from people who
Yeah.
feel like they they have something to say. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's, gives you something to consider, and sometimes it's, we also live in a culture now where there's a lot of noise, and you have to be able to filter all that out and really kind of understand who you are, what it is you want to portray, and how you want to portray it, and try and move through as graciously as you can, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, just a little bit offbeat here, but with the explosion of AI and AI tools, has how much of that has actually made its way into the photography world? Are there like any kind of applications that are being done with like cameras in terms of like quick adjustments that could be made on the fly? Or what is it that you've seen yourself personally?
No, I think there's a number of camera manufacturers that are producing cameras that their autofocus systems are aided by AI in some way. Some sort of component that is in the camera that um, is a little bit of has a little bit of an element of machine learning of what you want to do. I know guys shoot Canon, so Canon has an eye tracking function in their viewfinder that will learn, where you typically tend to look and put the focal point there for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can still move it around, but there's an aspect of that. Obviously, in post production, there are a lot of elements that you can incorporate AI into. I work with a company um, and use a program that um, it's called Topaz Labs, and it has noise reduction and sharpening that I run a lot of my images through, whether it's a lot or a little. I usually try not to over process, but it's enough to clean up some of the digital noise when you're shooting in less than optimal conditions, low light situations, things like that, where it gives a crispness and a clarity to the work that you may not otherwise get due to the like technological limitations of what a camera can do, right? So and then there's people that work with, you know, photo-based work, but infuse it a lot more with AI. I think it's kind of like there is this contentiousness that happens when you have people that don't understand that AI can be a tool that can be used as little or as much as you want to use. And then, there's also these kind of programs that we've been using for years that have openly now said that we've been taking your images that you use and putting them into the models for these AI generation things, which, we're all signing terms of agreement if we choose to read them in depth and choose not to
Mm-hmm.
opt in on certain things. It's a choice we have. But I don't know. I see AI as just another tool to be able to use to tell a story should the image that I take not tell the complete story.
I see. Yeah, because a lot of people naturally have very strong feelings about the AI and its intersection with art. Um, but I'm glad to hear a more like kind of nuanced perspective with it because I'd imagine that like a good chunk of those tools, as you said, like in the viewfinder or what have you, um, would actually be quite useful, especially if like as you use the tool like repeatedly, the camera kind of learns um, your style, which would certainly be helpful. But I'm actually wondering if it would also kind of put you into a corner where like the quote unquote algorithm of your camera just gets so used to you taking the same shots that it would kind of not sequester you to it, but make it easy to kind of stick in that one style. But I guess that it's up to the individual, like for them to branch out and do something else with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, I mean, like, I don't even the cameras that have that setting, I still find that are we're still in the early days of all of this, right? So
Hmm.
it is limited in how quickly it works and how quickly it learns your preferences. But yeah, more often than not, I don't have those things on because I want the functionality. I want the ability to choose where I'm looking, what I'm doing, and even though I'm looking somewhere else, like I might be thinking of a different level of composition. So um, I think like like in most things in life, we have a choice of whether or not to use it or not. And how much you want to use it is entirely up to you. If it's not for you, then it's not for you. I'm always just more fascinated by the people that like rail against something that can be used as a tool, either because they see it as a threat to what they do, or is it because they don't want to evolve? They're happy and comfortable where they are, and they see it as a threat that way because it's gonna make someone else be able to do something that maybe they do in camera, um, and
Hmm.
they see that as an unfair advantage. I don't really know, can't speak to that, but I feel like I'm always fascinated by the vitriol and the anger that is associated with the use of AI. Um, Maybe it's just because it's how they're getting their images, and they're getting their database for that particular algorithm or AI model to work. But it is very interesting to see the level of emotion that goes into either being a proponent for it or being against it.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally understand why people would be outraged with it, but as you said, it's at the end of the day, it's a tool, and whether or not you use it is up to you, and we all make our own decisions. Um, and there's no guarantee what the future holds, but typically when a new technology like this evolves, that this just kind of becomes the mainstay, a couple years down the line. So now that we're like out of kind of the ground floor of it, you know, it's probably, at least in my opinion, better to know the tool and how to use it than not to, because in a decade's time, the people that are best positioned to take advantage of this will be the ones that are right now experimenting with it, whether it's through generation or using actual hardware, um, whatever it is that's going to give those people a competitive edge in the years to follow. Because you like it or not, like it's here, it's not going anywhere.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so you might as well get used to it. Because I understand, like for commercial reasons, especially like with the that writer's strike that happened. I think it was about a year or two ago. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
how
The Hollywood writers.
yeah, how they made those agreements to like not use AI or have a percentage of it, at least for writing, be used for AI. I forget the exact agreement of it. Um,
It was for writing, but it was also I think the actors were also involved because there's a level of like sometimes the actors are forced to sign a contract that says like should you not like they'll use AI to reproduce your likeness somewhere. You know what I
hmm.
mean? So in that case, yeah, I could see it as you know, yeah, a threat to someone's professional existence, and they may not have to get paid for that, right? Um, if they use AI to put someone into a film. I don't really know the inner workings of it. I feel like um, we do not live like in a black and white world where it's like either this or that. There's gray everywhere, and I kind of reside in that gray where it's like I feel like if we can be, not 100% emotionally driven in our decision making, um, we can find logical uses for something, or you know exceptions to being able to use it, where you feel like, oh, this might be a little bit detrimental to this and this, and how do we figure out how to regulate. I don't know if there needs to be regulated, but like I said, we live in a gray world, and we should be able to move through things a little bit fluidly, in interpretation of how it affects you, and then how it could affect other people.
Yeah, and on that note, in terms of likenesses, I think the only actor that I know of that is actually fully signed on with this is Bruce Willis, who has completely signed off his likeness, which obviously he's going to be getting royalties for, and his family will once he passes. But that's mainly just because he has that I forget what ailment he has, but it's to the point where
Yeah.
like he's basically unable to well to act now or to has difficulty speaking, which yeah, I mean in that situation, like in my opinion, totally valid. You want to make sure that your family and your wealth is secured. So why not take advantage of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. Well, listen, I don't want to keep you for longer than you have to be because I know you said you can only do an hour here. Um, is there anything else that you wanted to cap off of?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we covered a lot today. I think it was a great conversation, and yeah, I don't know. There's this year I decided to try and go out and shoot every single day and create something every single day, and it all those images reside in a folder on my desktop and on my phone, and I call them, what I've dubbed the phrase "everyday miracles," where every day there's something that could happen, whether it's a sunrise or a sunset, or if you're in like a moment like Billy D captures, right? This beam of light comes down and illuminates someone walking down the street in this perfect frame. Um, that happen all around us, and I always like to talk about just encouraging people that you can witness these things if you just take the time to do it. So I always kind of encourage people to look around and find the beauty and the one thing each day that allows you to find joy or be inspired by either people or the world around you.
Right on. That's a hell of a perspective to have. Um, and I do see it certainly come through your work. Um, I mean, regardless if it's the city landscape shots or these nature shots that I've been looking at for the last little bit. Um, yeah, they there is something about photography that is able to like kind of transport you into that world, into that moment that you would otherwise not be privileged to, depending on where you live or what is it that you do in your daily life. Um, and I'm glad to hear that that is the kind of the perspective that you take on with these shots because it certainly does come through for the viewer. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, thank you, man. That's awesome. And so that makes me happy for sure.
Yeah, big fan. Also reminds me that like I need to get back into doing some photography of my own, and it's very humbling to look at these shots and compare it to mine. But no, it's great, man. I'm a big fan of your work. I really appreciate you taking the time today to have this conversation. Best of luck with future endeavors and all that. Do you have a book of work that's coming out in the next little while for your stay in Colorado, or?
No, the next book I'm working on will still be New York based, but it'll be all black and white photography. The book that I have out now already is a book called New York from the Air, and it's published by Rizzoli Books. Kind of, you can get it anywhere. Um, and So it's yeah, there it is. Bingo. Um, yeah, it's a collection of, probably the first 5 years of my aerial work over New York City. And yeah, we're diving in a little bit deeper this next time. The black and white treatment, but more of, this a couple weeks ago, I celebrated my 10-year anniversary of my first flight. Um, so this will be a little bit more broadly sweeping book. There'll be a lot more images from the ground as well, which is obviously a huge part of what I do. It's just that the aerial work is unique and catches the eye a little bit more. But I absolutely love sharing the images that I capture from the ground, as that was a huge part of my development and still is a big part of what I do.
Right on, right on. Yeah, I hope it goes well. Hope when the new bug comes around, would be great to have you on to talk about it some more. Your socials, it's just Beholding Eye. That's all the tags for all of them.
Yep. Yeah, that one is spelled a little different because somebody got on Twitter before me 10 years ago and took the name. um, But yeah, Beholding Eye is what I go by. Facebook, Instagram, Threads. Not Facebook. Facebook is just Paul Seibert Photography. Um, but yeah, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, come reach out and say hi if you were here today. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you again, brother, for hosting me and for this conversation. It's always nice to talk shop and yeah, have a little bit of time to talk about what drives us as creators. So thanks for hosting this space for us.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. I've seen you host some spaces on X. I should take some time to jump in on them because I love seeing artists kind of come together and unite over their experiences and tacts and their work, which is part of why we're doing this new series to try to kind of highlight that spirit. Um, and it's a fun time. It's a fun time. I wouldn't normally get to speak to people like yourself in my day to day job, so this is a great exercise in that. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. Um, Everyone can tune in. Not sure when we have the next interview. Probably sometime next week. Not sure what we'll have on, but we'll post everything on our socials. But that being said, thanks for everyone tuning in, and thanks again, Paul, for taking the time for today.
My pleasure. Thanks again.